Hi, my name is John Bechtold, and I thought it'd be fun to go over some of the features of a Kovalovsky model Zane Grey rim control reel. The one I have here is a 14-aught size. Now, I've already broken it down, cleaned and relubed, and reassembled most of it. I didn't screw on the anti-reverse gear and dog housing and the brake drum housing cover plate, so I could take them off and show you the internals and how they work. And I also haven't greased the gears yet, so you could better see how they work. First note, the reel has a 2-to-1 gear ratio. I've got a little piece of a paper towel down here, and if you count how many times it goes around, that's once, twice. So for every one crank of the crank handle, the spool turns twice. You'll note that the crank handle is right in line with the spool. It's not offset. Typically with a multiplier this would be offset. And once we open this thing up, you'll see why that is. So let's go ahead and open this puppy up. Nothing very unusual here. Just a standard ratchet gear and anti-reverse dog. And you'll note how Arthur keyed the ratchet gear and the crank handle to the post. So this is the famous Kovalovsky brake. Pressure is applied to the steel drum with this lever. There's a brass band lined with an asbestos material, so you can see. Now there's a graduated scale right here that kind of tells you where you're at. And this knob is just for fine tuning. You can do minute adjustments to the drag just by screwing that in and out. So the idea was that you could position the drag at the 4 or 5 on the scale, and then to set the precise amount of drag you want at that point, you can use this little adjustment knob. So it was that simple. So as we saw when I had this whole thing assembled, the reel has a 2-to-1 gear ratio. And you'll also notice that as we're turning the crank, you see the planetary gears underneath the brake drum spinning around. So that planetary gear train is what gives the reel its 2-to-1 ratio. Now, here's where the real genius of Kovalovsky becomes evident. The planetary gears had another more important purpose. When a fish was stripping off line under drag, they geared down the ratio between the spool and the brake drum. So if we do the same thing with the brake drum, you'll see I have a little Sharpie mark on the brake drum. So we'll simulate a fish stripping off line. There's my paper towel, and we'll count how many times the spool spins per turn of the brake drum. Logically, you'd think it would also be 2 to 1. So we'll see. I'll lock the spool. So there's our paper towel. That's 1. That's 2. And that's 3. So the ratio between the spool and the brake drum was 3 to 1 outgoing when a fish is stripping off line, but it's 2 to 1 when cranking in. And you'll also note that when a fish was stripping off line, this planetary gear train is stationary. It's no longer revolving. So this is when a fish is stripping off line, and this is when you're cranking in. The idea was this geared down reduction ratio, as Arthur referred to it, resulted in a cooler running brake because less revolutions of the drum in relation to the spool reduced friction, which resulted in less heat. Keep in mind, when a giant tuna is swimming 45 miles per hour while stripping line off a reel, a 6-inch diameter spool of line is spinning around 66 revolutions per second. So this gear is fixed. It goes on there like that. And so when that spins, and then when you're cranking in, they go like that. So that's your 2 to 1 ratio. And this is your 3 to 1 ratio. Now that is pretty slick. And this, of course, is where it goes onto the spool spindle. Alright, so let's put this puppy back together, and I'll kind of show you the finished product. So here's the completed reel. I'm giving it the white glove treatment. Came together really nice with no major issues. Absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous example of a Kovalovsky Zane Grey rim control. Beautiful reel. So as a comparison to the rim control, here is an early prototype Kovalovsky drag assembly. This is actually pretty slick. It only has one knurled knob to adjust from free spool to applying drag. Now let's look inside. So there is actually the brake drum, and you see the asbestos lining inside. And the way this worked was when you turn this knob, this would flare this band out, and it would press up against the asbestos. So this would go in there, and then when you turn this, it would draw this down, which would flare these out, and those would apply pressure. It's kind of hard to see it working. Okay. So this is opposite what Arthur ended up putting into his later reels, where the brake band applies pressure to the outside of the drum. I've actually I've yet to see a Kovalovsky reel with this style brake. I'm sure he must have made a few, but I haven't seen any. But again, this is definitely got the mind of a invented. This definitely came from the mind of an auto mechanic. But that's cool. I actually found this in Louis Kovalovsky's garage.